Now for our sarf lesson for the day, and our patterns that we have to memorize for this lesson is al-mudari' al-mansub, the present tense that is mansub in the case of being mansub. So if you remember from our very first lesson, I mentioned that words can be in a few different cases, and they have symbols on them to let you know which case they're in, and that's how we know what role that word is playing in a sentence. And when I first introduced that concept, I said that they can be either marfu' with a damma, mansub with a fatha, or majroor with a kasra. There's also one more case that I didn't mention at that time, because that case is specific just to af'al, just to verbs, and that is the case of majzoom, and we'll learn that in the next sarf lesson. But today we're learning the case of mansub for verbs and how that case works in verbs. So when I mentioned that the sign of being mansub is a fatha, that's generally the case when we're talking about asma, when we're talking about nouns. In verbs, it also gives the fatha here. So normally the present tense would be yaf'alu, but when it's mansub, it would be yaf'ala, except in the cases of those words that end in the noon, then instead that noon is dropped as our sign that it's mansub. And how does a fi'l become mansub? When it has len before it, or when it has an before it. Exactly how a verb becomes mansub, we'll learn more about in the book An-Nahu. One of the ways that the present tense verb al-mudari' can become mansub is to have the harf len come before it. And len is a harf that comes for negating the future. So yaf'alu means he does or he is doing. Lan yaf'ala means he won't do. Like in Quran it says فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا. If you are not able to do, and you won't be able to do, when Allah is challenging people to come with something the likes of the Quran. Also, let me just point out why we're going directly to al-mudari' al-mansub and we're not talking about al-madi al-mansub, because past tense verbs cannot become mansub. Al-mansub in terms of af'al, of verbs, is something specific just to the present tense. So keep that in mind. A past tense verb will never become mansub. So as usual, all we have to do is to memorize. Lan yaf'ala, lan yaf'ala, lan yaf'alu. So here it becomes mansub by dropping that noon. Lan taf'ala, lan taf'ala, lan yaf'alna. Here you don't see any sign of the conjugation here changing from what it would normally be, and we'll learn about why that exactly is when we get to some more advanced levels. Lan taf'ala, lan taf'ala, lan taf'alu, lan taf'ali. Here again that noon dropped. Lan taf'ala, lan taf'alna, lan af'ala, lan naf'ala. So how exactly this is working and what exactly the changes are going on in the construction of these verbs because of the entrance of this harf that makes them mansub, we'll learn the details of that in a more advanced way as we go along. But for now, just memorize this pattern, all of these conjugations, so you know how a word should sound or how a present tense verb should sound for each conjugation when it has a len before it. لن يفعل لن يفعلا لن يفعلوا لن تفعل لن تفعلا لن يفعلنا لن تفعل لن تفعلا لن تفعلوا لن تفعلي لن تفعلا لن تفعلنا لن أفعل لن نفعل. Memorize that and then we can move on to the next lesson.